Welcome back to Inside the National. Still to come on this evening's programme, a full sports desk, including the names that are in the hat to become Chelsea's manager. But first, international news. The vast majority of votes have been counted in Israel's election. The results are extremely close. The centrist Kadima party has just one more seat than the centre-right party Likud, and both the main party leaders are claiming victory.
In this evening, I'm turning to Benjamin Netanyahu. Before the election date was scheduled, I offered you to join a unity government under my leadership to handle the same challenges that are facing the state of Israel. You refused then. You refused and said that the people will decide, that the people should determine. The people have decided today, Kadima.
But at Likud party headquarters, Benjamin Netanyahu appeared in no mood to admit defeat.
With God's help, I will lead the next government. I'm sure I'll succeed in assembling a good, wide and stable government which will know how to handle the security and economic crisis.
With me is McLain from the comment desk. And Sean, before we get into the very complicated permutations and combinations of coalition building in Israel, first of all, explain procedurally what happens next.
Well, after the official election results are released, the president within a week will tap either the head of Likud, Netanyahu, or the head of Kadima, Tzipi Livni, to attempt to form a coalition and give them 28 days to do so, 4 weeks. And they will possibly have up to 6 weeks, another 14 days to form a coalition. If not, then somebody else will get the job.
Given the form of electoral politics, the PR system that they have in Israel, there's so many different possibilities for what the coalition government will look like. We'll get into some of those in a sec, but just talk me through the broad trends that we saw in this election.
Well, while Kadima won, it seemed to be more of a referendum against Netanyahu as a prime minister, because the right wing of the country, the right-wing bloc, won most of the votes. They have the majority in the Knesset now. So while Netanyahu did not come up on top, he may still become prime minister just because he has a greater share of, natural allies in the Knesset now.
So, I mean, it was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? Livni getting a few more votes than she was anticipated to get just before the election. She may just nudge ahead of Netanyahu. But also the other sort of key point on the right was this emergence of Avigdor Lieberman and his party doing so well, getting 15 seats. Tell us a little about him.
Well, Israel Beitenu is more right-wing than Likud in some ways, but they do support a two-state solution nominally, so they are not necessarily a right-wing bloc per se. They can come to the center more. So he will probably play the role of kingmaker, because he could fit equally into a Kadima coalition as well as a Likud coalition. So we'll see what happens there. Whoever he decides to throw a support behind will likely be the one chosen to be the first try to form a coalition.
But he said incredibly strong things about the Palestinians over the years, hasn't he?
He has. And like I said, nominally he supports a two-state solution, but certainly not in the way that the left or the center does. Now, he probably might be an easier partner to work with than Likud or even Shas, but he will have the say in who becomes prime minister likely, and therefore will have a strong ministerial package in any coalition government.
Perhaps the only way that he wouldn't have the say is if there was a grand coalition, which has been talked about, of Likud, Labour and Kadima. But obviously that would mean that one of Netanyahu and Livni would have to decide who was going to be prime minister and step back. Do you think there's any chance those three parties could come together?
I think there is. It's too early to tell who will be prime minister. It'll depend on, one, who gets the first shot at forming the coalition government, and two, who the smaller parties decide to throw their weight behind. So we'll see in the coming weeks after the official results, after we get some statements from Lieberman, we'll know for sure.
Just very briefly, what does all of this mean for the Palestinians? As you say, tricky until we know the exact formation of the government, but at this stage, what do you think it means?
Not much will change. It's just the nature of Israeli electoral politics. The coalition requires a lot of horse trading and therefore less of a strong stance from the party members.